Hello, everyone, and welcome to Healing Connections. This is Emmy Vadnais. Today, we are talking about stress, resilience, and well-being with Jen Willoughby Vogtmann, who is an occupational therapist, Reiki master and teacher, an associate professor in the School of Occupational Therapy at Baker College with 18 years of clinical practice. She teaches complementary therapies, wellness, and occupation. Jen has a private practice and blends her holistic healing training into her services. She is passionate about incorporating energy healing, guided imagery, mindfulness, and inquiry-based stress reduction techniques into her health and wellness coaching. Jen also specializes in legacy building and end-of-life plans well in advance for clients in her practice. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's so lovely to talk with you. And I just admire all that you're doing and the ways that you are helping lead healthcare forward. And you recently conducted a research study that we're going to get into in just a moment. And as a professor at a university, it seems that college students deal with a lot of stress. Of course, so many people are dealing with stress just in general, even before the pandemic. But are you seeing that stress is impacting college students even more?
Absolutely. The study that I did was actually pre-pandemic, so it took place in fall of 2019. And I'm grateful that we were able to do it then because the stress has even increased more since the pandemic with all the changes that have taken place.
So the title of this study is Building Stress Resilience and Wellbeing, Introducing Mindfulness Training to Reduce Stress in Entry-Level Occupational Therapy Students. And why was it so important for you to create this study?
Well, Emmy, my history, some of my clinical background is working with children in the school system. So pre-K, elementary, middle school, and high school. And what I noticed in those settings is that students did lack with skills to manage stress. And I worked with the students on my caseload, but I also ended up working with a lot of the regular ed students. And in fact, before coming to the college level, I did a whole school initiative where I connected with the principal, teachers, secretary, the entire school, and found out the need areas for the school. And students really struggled with transitions, transitioning back from recess to the classroom, going from one activity to another. And they brought that to my attention. And so I was able to work with them and saw tremendous gains. And so in this situation, there were 400 students, multiple classrooms, and I was able to teach them stress resilient strategies and saw those gains. What happened is when I went to the college level, I realized that the same problems still existed. The students really struggled with stress, and they had increased stress. They were commuting back and forth to college. They had exams to prepare for. They were managing families and relationships. And I really felt that they needed something at this time in this setting in order to really prepare for their role as a student, preparing for fieldwork, and then also for their role as an occupational therapist later in life.
I love how you, speaking of transitions, took that skill of working with young people and transitioned that up to young adults or college students. And so what did you find from the study? What really was significant or stood out to you from that study?
Well, the study was a 7-week study, and we spent about an hour and 30 minutes each week learning new strategies. And I taught the students a variety of strategies such as yoga, guided meditation, and breath work. And what I realized is the students were able to share that with their family. They were applying these strategies not just in the school setting, but also at the workplace, within the relationships that they had within all settings. And the students really felt calmer. They felt that they had tools that they could apply. There were two things that they actually that we actually came up with is the students felt it created a sense of calm, and that it was also a convenience. It could be used anytime, anywhere.
And it was statistically significant for helping with lowering stress.
Yes. So I used the perceived stress scale and I did a pre and post assessment. And the students showed a statistically significant difference with stress levels, perceived stress levels before and after intervention. So that was significant. I also did a instructor survey, and I wanted to know qualitative data. So that gave me the statistics, the quantitative data, but I wanted to know how I could incorporate this in the future, how I could help students in the future, and whether or not it could be blended into the classroom or something separate from the classroom. So I had asked questions specifically to those questions and how it can be used. And so students felt that they really enjoyed having a list of strategies that they could use. We had 100% that felt that it was helpful. We had 81% that felt it was very helpful. And then the other 19% felt it was somewhat helpful. So overall, they found that they had gained from it. Some of the students actually wanted to have 5 minutes of guided meditation in the beginning of every class, which I felt was really interesting. We had actually implemented that into the study, and others wanted class credit for it. I did not give class credit because I didn't want to put that pressure on them, but they felt that with all the commitment they put into it, that they would really like to benefit with that class credit.
Yeah, that was a takeaway for me. I mean, there's so many valuable pieces of information, and I hope people do read this study, that the students wanted or suggested that the professors begin every class with a meditation.
Yes, in this case, I had the students actually lead the meditation. So it gave them an opportunity to practice as future practitioners. And then it took less, it was less work for, so they could get the class ready while a student led them in meditation, and it worked out really well.
Nice. Yeah, it's reminds me of when I was a college student many moons ago. And when I was in my occupational therapy program at the time, now I graduated in 1996. At the time, it was still a bachelor's program. And for a Phi-Ed requirement, I took a relaxation class. And I thought, well, this is fantastic. I can just go and relax and get credit. And I thought, oh, this will just be an easy A, and maybe it'll help me. And it actually profoundly helped me because I was double majoring in occupational therapy and psychology. I was working full time
Mhm.
between work study and the job that I had. And I was overwhelmed, really. I was taking 19 credits. And so we would go to this into the health fitness center, and we would go into this room and we would lie down on mats and we would listen to 2 guided meditations, and they were really powerful and transformative. We did other things in the class as well, but it was only 1 hour a week, and it really lowered my stress levels so much that I just came away from that class with an I can do this attitude, and I felt a lot more confident. So is that something similar that you saw with your students?
I did. I did. We actually transitioned from the classroom to a yoga room, and we had a really relaxing environment. And so we would first practice in class together as a group, and students were allowed to practice independently outside of class. And definitely, I encouraged them to incorporate it in everyday occupations. And so there was a sense of calm. Moving forward, I teach the complementary therapeutic or complementary intervention class and wellness class, and we were able to incorporate guided meditation there as well. And it was at the end of the day, and there was just a sense of calm within the classroom. So I'm seeing that we're still using it in the school day, and that it still has an impact on the outcome of our students and gives them that sense of calm.
Beautiful. Well, well done. And how did you select the techniques and what were they?
I use a variety of techniques. I researched mindfulness-based stress reduction and found a whole variety of tools that were very effective. I looked at literature on studies that were done similar to mine in regular settings, in regular college settings, and found out what worked, what didn't work. I myself was a participant in a study, and I found that I used just one type of intervention, which I love to practice, but it wasn't a good match for me. And so I felt that I really needed to give the students an opportunity to choose whatever worked best for them. So I wanted to give them what I call sort of a buffet of options. So I looked at podcasts, we looked at guided meditation apps, we had breath work that I taught them. I had a yoga instructor come in and train them on yoga meditation, moving meditation. And so I looked at the literature and found out what worked best, and then took the experience that I had with what had worked best in my practice and offered a whole variety to the students.
Well, that's a great approach. It sounds like, would you say that the common theme there or outcome may be the relaxation response?
Yes, definitely. By practicing mindfulness, what I noticed is that the students were able to find that space between reaction and response. And if I could teach them anything, or if there was any outcome that I think the greatest outcome was that they were able to identify that space. And so it allowed them to give a conscious response versus a knee-jerk response to situations that were unexpected or
Right.
stressful.
Yeah. And why do you think that was?
They were able to identify and ground and become mindful in the present moment. Their thoughts were no longer in the future, they were no longer in the past, and they were able to ground themselves and reflect and make a decision on how to respond versus, responding with emotion.
Exactly. Yeah, and for those listening who don't know what occupational therapy is or what occupations are, could you just give us a quick little overview of what that is? Because a lot of people who aren't familiar with occupational therapy often think that it means vocation or a job, and it's further confusing because that is part of what occupational therapists can help people with.
Yeah, I think the best way to explain occupation or occupational therapy is we help people with everything that they do in life. So whatever occupies your time, that's occupation, whether you're driving to work, taking a bath, climbing a mountain, meditating, those are all things that occupy your time. And what we try to encourage is incorporating mindfulness in all of those different occupations. So an easy way to apply mindfulness as a habit is if you're doing your dishes every day, just dedicating that moment to feeling the water and just grounding yourself. And instead of being in the motion, being present in that moment.
Mhm. Beautiful. So, how would you define mindfulness for those who might be new to that term?
Yeah. So mindfulness, the best way I can describe it is to be present in the moment. So again, your thoughts are on the present moment. They're not in the future. You're not thinking about your list of things to purchase or list of things to do, and your mind is not in the past. You're not worrying about what happened the night before or taking thoughts and reliving those thoughts over and over. You're present in the moment and without judgment. So being free from judgment, and that's a tough thing for all of us because naturally we tend to judge. To be free of judgment, or at least allow yourself to relieve yourself from judgment for yourself, on others, situations. So again, just being present in the moment, not thinking about the future or the past, being mindful of what's taking place, what you're feeling in your body, and being free from judgment.
Yeah, and mindfulness is unique, at least how I work with it with my clients and teach with my continuing education, that mindfulness is something, it's a bit of a misnomer because it has the word mind in it, but it's really about, like you say, being present with all of our senses, but being able to be okay with our experiences. And what I really love about mindfulness, and I use this for myself and how I teach this, is that it can be its own meditation, meaning that it's something that you can practice just quietly, like the mindfulness-based stress reduction program,
Mhm.
and it's something that you can bring, like you say, into everyday activities, aka occupations. Like you say, with washing dishes and being able to notice your emotions, and rather than judging yourself for having them, to be okay with them and to come back into the present moment. And what would you say? You mentioned the word grounding. Can you describe what you mean about that?
For example, before I started the interview today, I knew I needed to ground myself. So I made a cup of tea and, I just sat down and actually got my aromatherapy going. So just being present and being present for you. When I ground myself, I feel the seat, beneath me, and and just become present for you. Again, I'm not on automatic. And I found that even throughout my life, there are many times where I am on automatic, and it's just bringing yourself back and and just getting in touch with sensations and being ready and present.
Hmm. Yeah, and it seems that with grounding, I know there's actual research that we can intentionally connect with the frequencies of the earth. And when we do that, that we can slow our own thoughts down. And I think that that can help us have that perspective taking of being able to observe ourselves and others without maybe being on overdrive or with a lot of adrenaline going, where we can, like you say, just sort of react quickly and sometimes snap at other people, or be hard on ourselves, or feel that we're a failure somehow, or give ourselves pep talks versus being negative with ourselves.
Yes.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about some of the techniques you use, but before we do that, what would you say, how much time did each student spend either each day or each week in the 7-week program to kind of get these results, to get these benefits in their lives? Because a lot of people, when they are first starting out with mindfulness or meditation or guided imagery or relaxation techniques, it's kind of like physical exercise. Some people either don't stick with it long enough, or they don't really have a sense of how frequently and the duration they need to participate in it for them to be able to start seeing and experiencing the positive benefits.
Yeah, so with the study, I had them, they were definitely committed to the hour and a half a week to learn a new activity. And then outside of that, it was really expected on their own that they would implement it on the 7 days that they were not, or not in class. And so I encouraged them to find an activity or spaces where they could apply it. That wasn't tracked, but what the literature says is that if a student, a college student, for example, spends 10 minutes a day doing intentional mindful meditation, such as something while they're like doing a guided meditation, for example, when they're brushing their teeth. I've done that before, and I know, okay, this is time. And so it's blended into my day. What that shows is that over time, when they need to use their stress resilient strategies within a situation that's stressful, it's going to come more natural to them, more quicker, more effective when they're using it in moments where it's not stressful. So it becomes habit building. So 10 minutes a day is the suggestion to make it become a habit
Mhm.
and to be able to apply it in everyday life.
And did you start seeing changes in the students before the 7 weeks were up? Like, did you notice, or did they notice changes after the first week or even the first time exploring these topics? Or did it take a week or two?
For everybody, it was very different. Some of my favorite stories were where a student was applying it at home, and she shared it with her son, and he would ask for mindfulness every day. Is it mindfulness time? Is it mindfulness time? And so she incorporated it in her every day. And so that was really nice to hear how well it was working in her natural environment. Another situation was one of my students, when she went to sleep at night with her partner and the dog, they would listen to a guided meditation to help them sleep. And not only did it help them sleep, but the dog had tremendous anxiety and the dog slept better too. So I loved hearing these stories that the students shared. So those were intermittent throughout the study. There was another situation, again, that I just loved when a student came to me and she said, I went to work and I tried it, she said. And she said, we were shorthanded and everybody was completely stressed out. And we were in the elevator getting ready to serve at this restaurant and everybody was stressed. She's like, we're going to do some mindfulness. And she led them in some breath work and all of them benefited. And so I thought that was pretty special that she was able to apply it in a crisis situation and have an effect not only on herself, but with all the people that she worked with.
Those are wonderful stories. Yeah, because you're a Reiki practitioner. I also provide energy healing, and there's a term, regulation or coherence. When we are in a more coherent or regulated or emotionally regulated state, we are more in that homeostatic balance. I mean, relaxation response, sometimes that term people sort of might think of like lying on a hammock or being a jellyfish, and that's nice too. But we can be like you and I are, or I hope you are, I am, but we're feeling relaxed and together, and then you can actually co-regulate with each other. So I think that when you describe, I love how that child wanted to participate in these activities, and also how the dog was able to pick up on that. And a lot of times, I think part of the reason that people like dogs is that they are naturally often in a very regulated homeostatic or relaxation response state, whatever you want to call it, where they're not thinking about the past or the future. And of course, some dogs and animals deal with anxiety, but their typical state is being in that present sort of meditative state. And us humans can pick up on that energy. And that's why I think we often can gravitate toward animals as well.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. So some of the other techniques that you use, one of them is inquiry-based stress reduction. Can you share what that is? That sounds fascinating.
It's a cognitive behavioral approach, and it's just a simple method with 4 questions. And when you or I or a student has a stressful thought, what we do is we just question that thought. We meditate on it. I had, for example, in this study, I had students reflect on the thought and then imagine how it made them feel, really to evaluate whether it was true, and look at themselves without that thought. How would they be without that thought? And then I actually had them do some turnarounds. So an example would be, one of my students felt that he wasn't paid enough. And he was frustrated because he felt he wasn't paid enough in the job that he did. And, it made him feel, not as worthy. And we talked about the different areas within the body that was impacted. And then, without that thought, of course, he would be freed from, feeling this way. And so we reversed it. So reversing it would be, I don't pay myself enough. And when we think that thought, I don't pay myself enough, I asked him, how could that be true or truer than the thought, I'm not paid enough? And some examples would be, well, I've never asked for any more. And another example would be, I keep working for the same amount. And, again, just having them meditate and reflect on it, whatever the thought may be, and then actually come up with a different reality, a different thought process. So it frees them from the stressful thoughts. And what we know is when we have stressful thoughts, they repeat themselves over and over again. And so we're thinking about that past thought and our perception of that past thought. And it's as we move forward, we're putting it into the future, and it's taking us away from being present in the moment, and it also causes stress and all kinds of negative responses. And so the evidence showed that people had better quality of life. They lived happier lives using this method. I myself have used the method to relieve myself of stressful thoughts. In the beginning with this worksheet, when we work it typically takes about an hour to really work through a stressful thought or change it. And if students still have a pull or a tug, or if I have a pull or a tug, I know that I still need to work it more. And they work it until until they're no longer attached to that thought. Over time, just like with mindfulness, they should be able to apply this method pretty quickly. So I know when I have a stressful thought, such as, he just cut me off on the highway, I now can reason through it in my head, do the worksheet in my head. Within 30 seconds, I'm freed of that thought and that judgment is gone. Other judgments that we may hold a little bit stronger do take a little bit longer. But this method was developed by Byron Katie and has been around for quite some time, several decades. And I had the pleasure of participating in a 10-day workshop with her and learned the technique and was able to share it with the students.
Well, that's very powerful. So it's really changing habits and how a person talks to themselves, that self-talk.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe with Byron Katie, it's called The Work.
The work, yes.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And one of the other approaches that you used with your students and helped them with was called the occupational performance coaching model. And
Mm-hmm.
can you share a little bit about what that is and how that helped your students?
Sure. This is a collaborative method where you work directly with a client. It's used most often with parents and children, occupational therapists working with parents and children. It's also been used with clients that had experienced a stroke. And I really felt that in this role, as an instructor, we coach quite frequently, naturally. And what this does is it allows the students or your client to actually come up with their own solutions. So helping them, coaching with them, going through methods in which they then develop their own solutions. So it's a lifelong skill that they eventually learn versus telling them what to do. I work with them on empowering them to come up with their own solutions.
And that is the coaching model. And did you find that your students were able to come up with their own solutions?
They were. So in the very beginning, they looked at their problem areas, the areas that they really struggled. And I used the Kawa model in the very beginning, and just as a tool for them to recognize where their supports were, where their challenges were. As they enter the occupational therapy program, where they are and where they've been. And so that gave them a true assessment, a really nice visual to determine areas of need and to help identify problems. After that, I introduced and taught them different techniques, and then I would check in with them. And sometimes I would instruct them whole class. Sometimes I would float one-on-one with the students and just really find out what worked best for them. What intervention worked best? Did they enjoy the breath work? Were they able to apply it? Was it working well for them? And in the very end of the study, they actually came up with their own intervention plans. And I helped coach them with the intervention plans, and they were able to put those in place by week 7. So as they left the study, they actually had a plan moving forward for the rest of the program.
Very nice work, Jen. And kawa means river in Japanese. Can you describe what the kawa model is?
Really, what it is it gives the students an opportunity to actually create a river. And I'm going to be very simple with this, to create a river, and any challenges they may see would be represented by a boulder, for example, and that would be considered a challenge. So it decreases the flow of the river. And then there you may see logs in place as well, and those are considered the supports. So those are the supports that maybe had helped them in the past get to where they are now, or even supports that they have ongoing. So the question is, how does your river flow? And is it flowing beautifully? If so, challenges do not exist. But if there's boulders present, then we know that there's areas in need. Again, this is a Japanese model that was used and represents river flow.
Right. I believe it was created by an occupational therapist in Japan, if I'm going to pronounce the name correctly, Michael Iwama. And in the culture there, he found that the people there were having a hard time understanding how occupational therapy could help them. And so I believe he came up with this assessment for people to draw a river as though it's their life now.
Mhm.
And I've used that in my practice. And I just think it's a beautiful way to look at your life and to understand, like you say, where are things flowing and where are there challenges, so that you can understand what are your strengths, what are the challenges, and how maybe your strengths can help you overcome those challenges. So, what do you hope to see will happen from this amazing study? And I should mention that this was co-authored actually with Ingrid Provident. Is that how you pronounce her last name? From Chatham
Yes,
University.
from Chatham University.
Hmm. Yeah. What do
Yeah,
you
she
hope
was.
to see happen from this?
What I'd really love to see happen is not only in occupational therapy programs, but in all college programs, there be some kind of plan in place to help students prepare. And I'd really love to see an entry level first semester program to help students with that transition. We know the first year is very significant, not just for medical program college students, but for all students. And, as we see mental health challenged in early childhood, middle school, high school, and college level, we really think that we need to provide tools at the college level, but not just at the college level. I think we need to begin as early as pre-K, kindergarten, elementary, and continue to reinforce and support students along the way. So as they develop the tools, we create opportunities for them to utilize the tools, such as having a mindfulness space in any setting where it's implemented, to have opportunities to advance, to have opportunities to apply it. I took a study skills class when I first returned to college at age 29. That's when I decided to be an OT. And I'd been out of school for a long time. And so I thought, well, I better just, learn as much as I can to be a really good student, because I was entering a challenging program. And they taught me really good techniques like how to take a multiple choice test and, some study habits. I really thought that there was a space for this too. And, again, looking at whether it's a program or an entry level class, that's just a requirement for mental health. I'd really love to see it implemented at all settings in all levels.
Mm, well said. And you have the experience because you worked with children as an occupational therapist, and you can really speak from that expert level of helping children with mind body challenges, mind body spirit challenges. And I agree with you. I think that that would be wonderful to have it start at a very young age. And this could be something that could be carried throughout their whole school years and experiences.
Yes. And Mindful Schools does a really nice job instructing OTs and teachers on how to implement this naturally within the classroom and within the environment. And that's the program that I used, as well as School Moves. There were some mindfulness strategies there in the elementary setting. found great benefits, but there are lots of opportunities for the college level as well. So would love to see more and more development in those areas.
Yeah, thank you so much for what you've done in this area, Jen. It's really truly groundbreaking, I think, in healthcare, and to have more research also in the occupational therapy profession. And not only do occupational therapists and other healthcare professionals, and really just everybody in general, need some type of ability to be more resilient with stress and have a better sense of well-being, but people who are healthcare practitioners, this is something that I think is imperative that they're trained in to help them with when they're working with their clients, because all of the people we serve are dealing with stress, particularly when they enter into the healthcare system, or even to help prevent entering into the healthcare system with some type of acute or chronic condition. That these relaxation, mindful approaches, mind body practices, whatever you want to call them, there's really a ton of research on them now. And it seems that this is really necessary, and I would say highly ethical of us university professors and healthcare professionals to incorporate this into our programs, and also when serving clients as well.
Agreed.
And how have you implemented some of these stress resilient and well-being approaches into your life? How has it helped you as you've gone forward? Because I found that most people who have studied these approaches or have taken continuing ed and have done what you've done, usually it's because it's benefited them personally, first and foremost.
Yes, it certainly has. I love to take mindful moments. And for me, a mindful moment could be actually just laying on my back in the snow and watching the snow fall down. I did that recently, and that was heaven. Just, grounding myself and just stopping what I'm doing just to be aware of my body and enjoying what's happening around me, and again, getting myself out of the future with my list of things to do or my errands to run. I just started forest bathing, which I'm exploring, and I really enjoy that as well. But also in conversations and responses to situations in all kinds of settings, having that space, knowing that space between reaction and response has really helped me professionally and personally in my life. But just being able to go to this anytime during a time of stress and just doing breath work um, has also been very beneficial.
Yeah. And some people, in my experience, even though they practice mindfulness or breath work or take yoga classes, still can have challenges with anxiety, depression, insomnia. And so, what do you recommend in that regard if somebody is still struggling, even though they try to adopt some of these approaches into their lives?
Yeah, we always will be up and down. It's not that it's going to take it away permanently. There's going to be highs and lows, and we all experience moments of increased anxiety and stress. And so I would say, don't give up. Find things that help you naturally. So if it's not yoga, walking, swimming, what do you love? What do you get lost in? Find out what you get lost in. And that's a really nice marriage between you and your active mindfulness as well. So doing things like that, but definitely don't give up. And remember, it's not about being still in the moment. It's just about being aware and allowing yourself to be present and just to slow down every now and then. But you're always going to have thoughts in your head, and you're always going to have highs and lows. Just don't give up and continue to find out what works best for you.
Yeah, well said. And one of the things I love about these various approaches, particularly what you just said, very much dovetails with the origins of the profession of occupational therapy, which is engaging in meaningful activities such as leisure activities where we can get lost in an activity. And of course, we know as OTs, it's not just doing something for the pleasure of it, which it may be for people who are dealing with stress, anxiety, depression. But of course, as OTs, we can also use that to help with physical well-being and recovery as well. So I think that these approaches are just really great for skills for occupational therapists to learn and other healthcare professionals as well. So Jen, since you're talking to me on the Healing Connections podcast, one of the questions I like to ask my guests is, what does spirituality or God mean to you?
Well, for me, I was raised in a home where Dad was an Episcopal priest, and so I have a Christian foundation. But I'm open to exploring spirituality even more, and I've been on my own spiritual journey to really define what it means to me. I do believe in a higher spirit, and spirituality to me, believe really is having a belief in something greater than myself. I call nature my heaven, and I connect with nature beautifully. That calms me, and that's where I worship. I also attend church and have a connection there, but I'm really open, especially at this time in my life, to really exploring other different belief systems and finding out what truly sits right with me.
I love that you mentioned nature and you have a beautiful image behind you. Could you just briefly describe what's behind you and why you wanted to share that with us today?
Yes, this is Yellowstone. It's a geyser. And my husband and I took a trip out there and we did a lot of hiking. And it, again, for me, that's my heaven. I love nature and being in touch with nature, and it just calms my spirit and my soul. And so this was a really great trip. And as I put it here behind me, it reminds me of that special place.
Beautiful. Jen, is there anything else you want to share about stress, resilience, and well-being that we haven't already covered?
I think you say it nicely when you would mention that we need to think about it in all settings. So not just occupational therapy, not just college level, but we all deal with stress. And in fact, we're dealing with more stress than we've ever dealt with before with the pandemic. It's brought on new concerns, and it's changing the world. I just feel that this is a time that we need to be extra compassionate and empathetic and really help each other with ways in which we can help calm and relax our bodies and our minds. So again, I just know that there's such a need out there, and I hope to spread some of this information and tools to the rest of the world.
Well, you definitely are. And how can people learn about your practice or get in touch with you? What's the best way for them to reach you or learn about your services?
Sure, they can contact me by email, and my email is getinspiredbyjen@gmail.com.
All right. Jen, thank you so much for your immense contributions to our healthcare system, to the occupational therapy profession, and to the university systems at large as well. And for joining me today, it's been a great joy to have you with me.
Thank you. It's been a great joy to be here.
Wonderful. And thank you all for listening and joining us today. And until next time, be well.